For 6 years, I've been running for Congress. And every time that I get an interview from the radio or the TV or the newspaper, every single time they ask me the same question. Why would you go out and spend $100,000 of your own money? Why would you spend 6 years of your life? Why would you say what you say in politics and end up losing your job? Why would you put on a bulletproof vest, put on a gun, and walk around the courthouse carrying your sign? Why would you do that? And I say, I do it for the same reason that you get up every morning and go to work, that you take care of your kids, for the same reason that our ancestors fought at Valley Forge, that our ancestors fought in the Alamo, because our children are being attacked. Every single day, white children are denied a job and denied an educational opportunity. Just imagine what it would be like if they applied the same strategy, the same principles to a sporting event. Let's just say one of our kids, after years of practice and energy and effort, actually gained 20 yards on the football field in an excellently performed and executed play. And the referee came running out and said, "Oh, wait a minute, you're white. We're going to subtract 5 yards from the yardage that you just gained." You would see such a riot in the stands, you would think the Bolivia soccer riots looked like a church picnic. But every single day, when a white child applies for a job, or when a white child applies for an educational opportunity, that's exactly what happens. If your son or daughter were to apply for admission to the University of Michigan Law School today, and he got a higher score than a minority, the minority is going to get that position in medical school, and we're not in law school, and we're not talking about some football game that's forgotten a year from now. We're talking about your son or daughter's lifetime. How much money they're going to make. It could cost them $500,000 in lost income for their whole lifetime because of that. It could cost them their marriage that they could have had. It could cause them to have 3 children instead of 4 or 5, or 1 child, or have no children at all. My question is this: when did it become against the law to be white? The question is, why has this happened? When I first came across these problems, the quota system, back in the 70s, I used to think we lived in a free country. I could not understand how could it possibly happen that the government would have policies that 80% of our people opposed. Now, I reasoned a candidate who opposed those policies would run for office. He would win, and the policies would change. That's exactly what I did. And this is the way it works. This is why we have quota systems. Because after I won the election, I got 60,000 votes in the general election. I got 78% of the votes in the primary. 60,000 votes. The Republican Executive Committee of 66 people voted to throw my name off the ballot. They had no problem with dimpled Chads, no problem with hanging Chads like in the 2000 election. They counted all my votes, all 60,000 of them, and promptly threw them out. I mean, what is the purpose of an election? If the Republican Executive Committee can throw your name off the ballot after you win. And another thing I thought about at the time that I was considering running for office, I thought, well, hey, I'll just run for Congress, put an ad in the newspaper. Who would think of anything else? I could put an ad in the newspaper just like the competition is. You know what happened? I was a Republican nominee for Congress. My name was on the ballot right next to Bush and Kerry. That was in 2004, before they threw my name off the ballot in 2006. I sent my ad to every newspaper in the 8th Congressional District, 22 newspapers. Only 2 agreed to run my ad. I mean, what does freedom of speech mean? That I can go out and yell, "Vote for me," to passing motorists? I mean, the reason that we have policies like busing or quotas or illegal immigration or war in Iraq is because the people are not allowed to vote for the leadership that they want. Had I been elected, I got 78% of the vote, I got 6% of the votes general election. Had I been elected, I would have voted against quotas. I would have voted against the war in Iraq. And the people voted for me because they agree with that. The reason we do not have policies that the American people want is because we do not have a legitimate electoral process. The electoral process is short-circuit at the primary level. And we end up with shills like Bush and Kerry. No, I think that Bush and Kerry would make great president for Israel or Mexico. But we need a president in this country, the United States. You know, if Bush and Kerry don't want that job, hey, I'd like to have it. No, George Bush is no more president of the United States than Alfred E. Newman is president of Time Warner. He's just a marketing image held up by Halliburton Enron. He's no more real than the Pillsbury Doughboy, Betty Crocker, or Sarah Lee. That's all he is. Now, George Bush does not advocate the policies that we, the American people, want. Just one example: immigration. 80% of the American people are opposed to immigration. Yet George Bush says, "Oh, the Mexicans are good workers," he says. "They'll add to our economy," he says. Well, what did they add to the Mexican economy? Poverty, crime. They'll add the same thing here. They'll make our country the same disaster they made their own. George Bush said, "Oh, the Mexicans, they just want to come here to work." Well, they can't work in Mexico. The soil cannot be tilled in Mexico. The rivers cannot be dammed in Mexico. The trees cannot be cut for lumber to build factories and houses in Mexico. But once they cross the magical Rio Grande, magically, the boogeyman of environment that's held them in poverty for a million years just disappears, and magically, why, the soil can be tilled. Magically, the rivers can be dammed. Magically, the trees can be cut for lumber. Well, I've got news for George Bush. The cause of prosperity or poverty is not in the air, or the soil, or the water. It's in the heart, the soul, and mind of the race. And the reason Mexico is poverty-stricken is there are Mexicans there. And the reason the United States is prosperous is not because of the air, the soil, or the water. It's because there are white people here. I mean, it gets to be so absurd. For 4 billion years, the sun shone down alike over the continents of Europe and Africa and Asia. But only the white man looked at that sky and saw a plane. Who do you think invented the first airplane? Orville and Wilbur Yokohama? For 4 billion years, the lightning rent the air alike over the continents of Europe and Africa and Asia. But only the white man looked at that lightning and saw an electric light. Who do you think invented the first electric light? Oh, Mohammed Edison? For 4 billion years, the moon shone down alike over the continents of Europe and Africa and Asia. But only the white man looked at that moon and built a spaceship and landed on that moon. Who do you think invented the first spaceship that landed on the moon? Werner von Sitting Bull? Now, others might argue that if we'd only waited another billion years or another million years, some other race might have invented electric light or an automobile or a radio or a TV, but the fact remains, in 4 billion years, no other race ever did until the white man showed them how. Yet, despite thousands of years of anthropological, anatomical, and historical evidence, the pundits continue to say that we should integrate with the less favored races. If we had integrated with less favored races thousands of years ago, there never would have been electric light. There never would have been an automobile. There never would have been an airplane. In fact, the pundits, they actually tell us that we are the cause of the world's problems. One example, Noel Ignorancita, who is the editor of that elite anthropological journal, Race Trader. He said, quote, "The goal of destroying the white race is so wonderful, he could not imagine a single possible objection to it." Well, I can think of one. Every morning, Noel Ignorancita gets into his car, invented by a white man, drives down to an office, turns on his light, invented by a white man, sits down at a TV monitor, computer screen, invented by a white man, and types in, "The goal of destroying the white race is so wonderful, he could not imagine a single possible objection to it." Well, I can think of one. If he had destroyed the white race 1,000 years ago, he'd have to watch TV by candlelight. But we're supposed to pretend we cannot see that the races are not equal, that we do not know that the brain sizes are not the same, that we do not know that the IQs are not the same. And there's a reason why people are afraid to tell what they see, because they know what happens to people who say what they see. Sam Francis, He told us what he saw, that the races were not equal. He lost his job. Ernst Zundel told us what he saw. He's in prison to this day. We continue to say we cannot see what we continue to deny what we see. In Zimbabwe, it used to be the good old white-run country of Rhodesia, where it was a food exporting country. And now they turned it over to the less favored races, to the proletariat. The proletariat can't tie their own shoes, let alone run a government. And what was once a prosperous food exporting white-run country, now millions are starving in Zimbabwe. And then in 1994, they turned South Africa over to the proletariat, to Rousseau's noble savage. And Rousseau's noble savage does what Rousseau's noble savage always does: rape, rob, and murder. And now, South Africa, the bastion of white civilization, look, it's got the second highest murder rate in the world. And in Detroit, look what egalitarianism. Look what the less favored race has done in Detroit. Detroit used to be the center of industry, the Motor City. Now it looks like a bombed out slum. No, unless we stop immigration and welfare, this country is going to look like one big Detroit. And every one of you knows it. And it's time for you to start voting what you know is the truth for the future of your children, your civilization, and your country.